And thanks for having me today. I'm really excited about speaking and sharing some of my best practices with your audience on, how to really leverage mobile learning within your organizations and that. I just wanted to confirm that the screen has come through all right.
Brenda, can you do the main screen? Just get a little bigger. Perfect. That looks great, Brenda.
Great. Sorry about that, guys. So what I have in front of us right here is really kind of my favorite quote. And I actually have it hung up in my office, so it's a constant reminder to strive for more. But, learning and innovation, it truly does go hand in hand. And the arrogance of success is to think that what we did yesterday is going to be sufficient for tomorrow. So, in this session, what I really want to do is kind of touch on where we've been and really what does the future hold. I want to show you guys and talk about unique affordances that mobile provides for you within your continuing medical education programs or CE programs or within your organization or government sector as well. All of these techniques can be interwoven to strengthen your overarching programs regardless of kind of where you're at today. I want to show you a few examples that will let you dream a little bit, see how others have been successful in the field, and then I want to kind of tie it up with an approach that I use with organizations to really help them be effective in developing a strategy and implementing it in the safest risk-averse way possible. So let's get started. Back in the day, this is when I went to school when I was just a kid, and I hope you guys are chuckling right now because while I'm aging, I'm not quite that old yet. We brought everybody into a formal classroom. I heard stories from my father about how he had to walk 5 miles each way in the snow, and both directions it was uphill. It was a struggle to get there. There was a lot of effort that went into it. There was a lot of pride of the fact that the folks went to school and they were educated. That's still the fact today. We've streamlined the getting there portion. But it's still really kind of focused about this complete curriculum. And even though we have, started to morph and had the most technological advances in the last 30 years, most organizations are still set in this mindset of a formal course. So as technologies continue to evolve, a formal course has really gone into a mobile alternative of the same delivery method. So we have virtual classrooms such as the WebEx session today that may be replacing bringing people into a classroom. The format's still very similar. You can have your whiteboard discussions, your Q&A, your interaction, break out into work groups. Same delivery content. A lot of folks today don't even necessarily modify their content for delivery, which I don't recommend. I think you do need to modify it for this delivery medium. And the e-learning courses, that more from CBTs where we actually had to send out CDs with the training on it, into web-based training, into, today, hopefully thinking mobile first, so that we're going mobile responsive. We're not throwing away everything that we've invested into, but we wanted to really maximize the first mobile affordance that comes to people's minds, and that is anywhere, anytime. If we have these devices that are ubiquitous, we have everywhere, how can we leverage that to dispense content to the actual individuals? And mobile responsive is a very good first step. However, if we take a look at all of the opportunities of learning throughout the complete life cycle of an employee and the environment, this is called the 70-20-10 framework. Sorry about that. We can kind of see how people really are learning throughout their job. Only 10%, if you look at the bottom of the screen, is where we're gaining the knowledge and the information we need within the job through a structured course or a program. 20% of that they project is really through, learning and developing through others. So mentoring programs, coaching, peer-to-peer networks, internal networks, external networks, collaboration. And 70% of really what we need to know on the job to be proficient they're speculating is done through learning and developing through actual hands-on experience on the job in that moment of time. We're solving problems. We're activating those critical thinking skills. We're stretching ourselves, and because of those assignments that are stretched, it's forcing us that we have to then gain additional knowledge to be able to perform the particular task that's on hand. So within the organizations, most companies are investing the vast majority of their dollars in the area that ultimately probably has the smallest impact for them to actually be able to perform their job efficiently, and that's in that bottom 10%. Now, what I like to throw out there is that mobile really gives us an opportunity that we can hit on each one of those three components, and at the end of the day, create a really strong program. One of the problems with the classroom training or these formal courses, whether it's a 2-hour e-learning course or, an 8-hour face-to-face course, is that we're humans. We're not machines. We don't absorb material and can immediately, take it to long-term memory. We have to be able to space out our content delivery methods to allow us to retain the critical information and be able to contextualize that on the job. So for mobile to be able to hit on all these different areas, it really kind of requires us to develop a new mindset. And the first step in that new mindset is all about the unique mobile affordances. What does this device allow us to do that in the past we couldn't do, or we couldn't do with a laptop? So, the first thing that comes in mind whenever I speak is anywhere, anytime. That is mobile responsive. However, if you notice on the screen, I don't have that one listed because that's not a new mindset. Typically, it's the same content. But the new mindset is not anywhere. I want to get the content to them right in time, just in time, right when they need it. We want to be able to leverage the contextualized communication channels, things that we are comfortable with. That's part of our DNA now as people, interacting with these devices. So, SMS, text messaging, we could even program in some basic phone calls and reminders into the systems. The unique features of the mobile devices provide some tremendous power for us. And what I mean by that is the ability to leverage the fact that your mobile device knows exactly where you're at 24 hours a day. The GPS, how can we leverage that to dispense some content right when somebody needs it, or to create personalized content for somebody? The fact that your device has a phone, not a phone, a camera, sorry, of course your device has a phone, but it has a camera. And it gives us the ability that we could record videos to send on to a coach or a mentor and show that I've been able to demonstrate something on the job. I can apply it. You can leverage that technology for augmented reality or virtual reality where, the camera, just like your eyes, looks at an object and it makes a decision, and based upon what it sees, it's bringing up a new experience for you. The integrated channels for collaboration, that peer-to-peer based learning, finding the experts right at that moment of time, data capture, XAPI, it gives us the ability that we can track anything within the mobile solutions, and from that analysis we can make stronger programs. We could create personalized learning experiences. If somebody is really struggling in a particular area, we can know it and we can send them reminder content to help them get over that particular struggle at that moment in time. So these are the things that really we want to kind of embrace in moving forward. So in talking about the affordances, so what does that really get down to? Well, it's a fabulous way of providing information, and I kind of started to talk about this a little bit. It's really the first time that we can provide two-way information. We can provide top-down from the organization, and we can provide learner information back up to the organization as well to peers throughout the organization. When I say that, I get chills. running through me, because that power is so incredible, and we just need to hone into it. The context. So much learning, and the problem with formal programs is that, we have to take this generic content and then, convert it over to how it applies to me within my particular situation at a moment of time. That's a lot of processing. And if we can leverage mobile to get to the critical thinking, to add contextualized elements inside of it, that's a wonderful thing, and it's going to fill some true gaps that are probably existing within your learning strategies. And again, I've kind of touched on the collaboration and the data capture as well. And what this gets into is a series of techniques, delivery methods, approaches that you can leverage that I would say are all mobile learning. And so, we've got the tablet base, you're responsive, we have apps that we can leverage, ebooks, interactive ebooks now, your video components, gamification, game-based learning, podcasts. Whoa, that's a step back in time, but they're becoming hot again. And podcasts are great because what if I'm driving and I want to listen to something? A video's not going to cut it, but if I'm looking for the top tips on how to close a sale, that could be great information while I'm driving. So part of mobile is giving the learners the opportunity to choose the best delivery method based upon their situation and where they're at. Sometimes text will be best, sometimes video is best, sometimes audio is best. But giving the learner some choices on what that mechanism is can be very powerful. We've got augmented reality in the bottom, and performance job aids, and then the SMS. So again, mobile's a pretty broad thing. So the first kind of tip I want to give y'all is when you start thinking about mobile in your organization, you're brainstorming with teams, talk about the affordances, talk about the gaps in your existing programs. What do you want to solve for? Where does it fit? And then what does that mean? How can we find the best delivery method through a mobile solution to fit that particular problem? So let me go ahead and start walking you guys through a few examples I have here. The first one, as I had talked about before, in formal classes, the amount of information that we lose is substantially greater than the amount of information that we retain. And that as soon as you walk out of that door, and even today, you're going to lose 50% of what I say. So if we could find a time or a way to stretch stuff out over a period of time, reinforce the most critical elements, help your employees apply the context of how does it apply to me over a period of time, all of these things ultimately will allow them to be a better tooled employee and meet their goals better. And these next two things I think are fabulous ways of being able to quickly and easily integrate mobile learning within formal professional development programs, continuing medical education, accounting information, any of your CE programs, and get kind of a leg up on the competition at this point. The employees love it. So let me walk through this for you. So the Church of Latter-day Saints was sponsoring a 12-week formal program in Mexico and Brazil. And it focused on, how to be an entrepreneur, personal finance, business skills. 12 weeks is a long time to go through a program. So what they did is they partnered up with an organization called Mobile Coach, and they said, we really want these folks to be successful. It's not just about the transition of knowledge, it's about the application and really making it a lifestyle change. They are changing their behavior at the end of the day. It's more than just knowledge. So what I'm going to show you here is how they leveraged a virtual coach. So this is an example of taking mobile into that 20% area into the 70-20-10. And they did it again. Key content, personal goals, accountability. And a given to me, if you're going mobile, is that we are capturing every piece of data and analyzing it. So at this point, imagine you're holding up your phone on the screen, text message comes in, the phone vibrates, and Coach Pedro says, hey, this week I challenged you to talk to at least one group member or friend about what helps their business grow. Second one comes in, what did you learn that can help you improve your business? So we're encouraging them to talk to others outside and then to, take that information and do something with it. So at this point, I wrote down telling everyone about business to find new customers. The next one is, hey, thanks for the reply. And then let's try to implement these things within your business. With the accountability component, we can then turn to a series of questions and say, hey, in these questions, based upon what you choose, I'm going to help you set goals, and later on I can send additional messages to see how you're meeting those goals. So on this first question, it says, please choose one of the following major business goals. You want to get more customers, increase profits, increase savings. I text back, hey, I'd love to increase profits. Great choice. So now that the texts start to focus in on my goals to help me be successful. What would you like your typical profit to be? 400. By this date, what would you like it to be? 1,000? Great. Now I've set a goal, there's accountability set in place, and we can continue to move towards reaching that goals. And this virtual coach throughout, the series of the 12-week program will help them take all of this content and then apply it and get a jump start getting going. So the next one is actually reinforcing the formal course, but after the event. The first one that I showed you was part of the program. And this one is after they leave the course, how do you help them remember everything they need to know and take them to that critical thinking component as well? So in this case, the coach is coming in here and it's, reminding us some of the key content was, tricks for improving client relationships. So within the text message, we can send them a link that they click on that link and it loads new content or existing content. You click on that, it shows them the, tips. And then it says, hey, take those tips and apply it this week. Which one are you going to apply? Reply back, client thinking about their challenges. And again, it kind of continues more. That's great. I'll check back in with you and see how it's going. With the quizzing elements are very powerful because if an individual doesn't get the question correct, we have an opportunity to redirect them to content. And you can do that based upon which of the incorrect answers they choose. So it's getting down pretty specific. So in this case, standard, multiple choice question. Chose A. This point says, yeah, that's great. It then gives the correct rationale for why, which is always important. But what about if I want to know more about this indirect costs? I text more, and then it gives me additional information. If I didn't do anything, obviously that text would not come through. So text messaging can be a very powerful way to kind of fill that gap in the forgetting curve. And there's been studies out there that basically say that if you can get 4 reminders over a 90-day period, that will increase your retention of the material to almost the point in time in which you walked out of that classroom. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're not going to remember everything. It's the most critical information that they need to have and apply to move forward. If you want to know more about that theory, it's actually called the spacing effect, and very powerful strategic use of mobile learning. Another example that I want to walk you through here briefly is actually with Sesame Street and something called Text for Baby and Too Small to Fail. So major nonprofit initiative that really their goals are to provide a free text to parents program and an app. It delivers tips, parenting videos. What's really cool about this, everyone, it's personalized. So this shows you the app. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is showing the screen that would show up for a woman that was in week 21 of her pregnancy. So each week of the pregnancy, it is breaking it down and showing, how large is the baby? How does it compare to others? What are the critical things I need to be doing this week? There's videos that you can watch, external links to go through. This is also tied with a text messaging program that twice a week they send you additional material that they have found to be very helpful to parents that happen to be in that particular week of the pregnancy. But for new parents, you know, the pregnancy is only step one. What about when the baby's here? So it then walks them through, and the second screenshot is showing you for the first year of their development, the app stays running, the text messaging system stays running, and says, you know, now let's help you be successful in your first year. And this is where it gets really powerful as well. You can actually put in your vaccines, when they're due, all of your doctor's visits, compare to others, social networks. It's a pretty powerful tool that are out there. It's completely free, and if for no other reason, you know, even if you guys are not expecting a baby in the future, go ahead and download that, as well as the text component, because it'll give you a really good experience on how they've kind of put this piece together and what it feels like from the learner's perspective and what you like and kind of what you don't like. Another example here is actually from academia, and this is taking mobile into that 70% category of problem solving and content application, really getting critical thinking. Now, when I show this to folks, people's first instinct to me is, well, Brenda, I just don't know that we could create this. And what I want to say before I show you is that the professor actually created this alternate reality game on their own using a free tool from the University of Wisconsin called ERIS. So it can definitely be done. And again, part of this is to kind of show the world of possibilities. So imagine in a graduate level Spanish 202 course, how do you really help your students be able to think critically in Spanish, having a problem, and then also being able to solve it and leveraging the language as much as possible? And this particular professor came up with, they're going to create a quick little game that's a murder mystery, and the students interact with simulated characters, other people within the class, as well as local citizens. So this particular program plays on iPods, and iPhones, actually iPhones today. And what happens is in the first week, the teacher gives out these devices, and they're loaned to the students for a couple weeks, and kind of sets up the scenario of, hey, this is what the game is going to be. This is how you use the technology. In the first week, they start to receive some simulated phone calls from characters in the murder mystery. They get some text messages that come in, some emails, things along those lines. It's setting up the story of the murder. The teacher actually breaks the students into groups of 4, and these are now teams, so they're working with their peers to solve it. At the end of the first week, there's a classroom debrief. Two main things they wanted to cover here. Number one, technology. Is anybody having any issues with it? Yes or no? Let's get those taken care of right away. The second, and probably as important, if not more important, is, are you up to speed with the storyline? You know, are you absorbing everything, or are you with us? Because if you're not going to be able to move forward. Week 2, it continues to play outside of the game. Periodically, kind of messages come in trying to figure out who the murder person is, and then there's a classroom debrief. Week 3, this is where it gets really cool. They actually go out to a small town in New Mexico, and they've got some of the local convenience mart and business owners in on this gig. So within the actual game, you can see that we have a GPS here, and it's showing them different locations they need to do. When they answer clues correctly, they go to a different location. So for example, they might go to a Quick Trip, and at that Quick Trip, they need to talk to somebody. And they'll speak to them in Spanish. That person will give them the clues or distractors or whatever it is, and then they will move on with the actual solution. It's a few hours they're out of the classroom, but really get some thinking critically, interacting with locals and their team. At the end of that, week 4, they come together to solve the mystery, and then they give a presentation to the class. What a fabulous way, you know, not just for the teacher to say, yes, they're really able to think in Spanish, but to build the confidence of that student of, yeah, I really do get this, and look how successful I was, and turned it into something quite fun as well. The last example I want to show you here is tied to the medical practice. And this is, the Ebola crisis, which may not be on the forefront of your minds, but it's still a pretty significant issue throughout the world. And so you guys may or may not be aware of this. Medical practitioners were never trained or educated in Ebola. How to treat it, how to identify it, how to care for the dead, any of that. So suddenly this major crisis blows up once it hits the U.S. for our perspective, and the government, military agencies, nonprofit groups, academia, major corporations all said, hey, we got to do something. What do we do? And I want to quickly show you the response. This solution was actually created in 2 weeks, and it was leveraging an architecture that was already successful. So don't think you always have to recreate the wheel. The first time you develop something, it might take longer, and in this case, the first time it took 3 months for a different solution. The second time, they're able to swap out content, change some approaches, go live in 2 weeks. So real quick, what we're looking at here is they had created a solution that leveraged training the medical professionals on Ebola based upon a delivery method of playing cards. So there's a lot of downtime when you're out in the field, and if you could have game cards that they could flip through or use as ready refresher, it's a constant reminder. So that's one component. The same information is loaded into a web-based app so they can access it from anywhere. Content can be changed at any time. Signs and symptoms, diagnoses, treating the symptoms. There's a quiz in there. I'm going to show you the quiz in a second because I love it. It is a brand new mindset, and I think we should probably try to integrate it as much as possible. Augmented reality was leveraged within the delivery of the content. And then at the end of the day, while it's nice that these folks are educated on it, getting down to the nitty-gritty is, that's fabulous, but they have to be able to clinically diagnose these people correctly right after they learn the material. It might have been on the flight over. So aiding in that clinical diagnosis, in my opinion, is as important, if not more than important, than the learning component of the solution. And that went from mobile devices, smartphones, all the way to glasses and the smart watches. So let me just quickly walk you through a few of those key components there. Right now, what you're taking a look at is the quiz. And you're probably first instinct of, whoa, that doesn't look like any quiz I've seen. There's no multiple choice questions. Folks, we're talking about life and death here. I really don't want to take a chance that I guessed incorrectly, or maybe I recognized an answer, but it's really, I didn't recall it, I recognized it. It's a hit and miss. And that. So in this case, the green thumb up means, yeah, I rocked this question. I'm all over it, 100%. The red thumb going down means I'm clueless. I know nothing in between. The learner judges and rates for themselves. So the question is on the screen within the card. They answer it verbally out loud to themselves, and then they personally rate themselves. Now what's on the right-hand side of the screen is, as a learner, I can go back to each individual question, or the reports can be run up to the higher-ups in the organization, and they can see where the strengths and weaknesses are. At my point, I can see I want to go back to every red thumbs down. If it's not green or close to it, that's something I need to focus on as a learner. Other cool thing about this solution is they actually divided the content distribution up. So if you're going to deploy or go out in 2 weeks, they don't want you to wait till the last second to cram. So basically they say within 2 weeks, how much content can you absorb within that time frame and still be proficient? So they kind of dish it out for you. If you're going to deploy in 6 weeks, you would have to take less content each day because your time frame is less and it's stretching it farther. And the system automatically does that when you put in, when am I flying out inside of it. So that's pretty cool too. The augmented reality component is fabulous. Clients always say to me, a constant question is, our content changes. It's in constant flux. So I can't put it in a course. I can't put it in a learning solution. I don't know if it's ever going to be the same. Well, they came up with a really creative solution to that, and it's augmented reality. So if you guys remember, in one day back when it hit the Dallas hospital, the procedures for putting on the protective gear changed like 3 times in one day. which is ludicrous. CDC is the owner of that content, so anytime it changed, they updated their website. So they're kind of the owner of the content. So if you want to make sure the content is right, you pick up a card or the app and you scan the picture of it. As soon as you scan the picture, and that's what you're seeing here in that image with those dots in the middle, is it's looking at it, analyzing, oh, I see this, what do I do now? And what it did then with that particular image is it redirected them to CDC's website specific to signs and symptoms. So this filled the gap of content is always changing. In the performance support side of things, we have your checklists that are out there. You can go through, check off each individual one as they're actually treating a patient. So hopefully within those examples, I was able to share some things with you that got you excited about the potential of mobile learning. And what I'd like to do next is kind of talk about where do you go from here? So I'm excited. I understand about these affordances. I realize that we need to probably strengthen our existing programs today. How do we go about doing that? And this is a three-step process that I have been using well before mobile. My first mobile project was in 2008, and I've actually been using this pretty similar approach since the early 90s, I would say, when the computer-based training started to come out. And it's morphed some, obviously, but it's a rock-solid approach. And the first step really is, you need to have a vision and understand and have a good rationale to ensure that everybody is on the same page and you have success criteria that you can modify. A roadmap, how are you going to safely and efficiently get from point A to point B? Who do you need to have on the team? Do you need to modify any processes? What types of technology do you need to tweak or acquire? And, putting that out into a nice little game plan or roadmap. And then piloting. Some folks haven't piloted programs in a long time because everything has been safe. We've been doing very similar approaches for so long, we don't really need to test it. But in the mobile world, even though my first project was in 2008 when the first iPhone came out, every project I'm learning something. And it's still to the point, and technology is moving so quickly, I really recommend that we need to be evaluating and scaling our projects and piloting them and really starting to adapt a mentality of development that our web developers and designers have been leveraging, more of an agile approach instead of a waterfall approach to our development methodologies. So obviously I don't have enough time to go through this whole bad boy in this session, but let me talk about kind of some of the key questions for a successful implementation. Your visioning state, I break that down into 4 key areas. The first one, with some of my peers in the industry, I'll get into some pretty heated discussions about, and that's really understanding where you're at today and, what's the problems that you're solving for. And maybe you're like, well, I don't have a problem. Maybe it's a gap. Maybe problem is too strong of a word for your organization, but there is a gap, there is a hole, there is a way that we can make it stronger. What causes it? How much is the problem costing you today? Who contributes to solving the problems? Those types of things. I think it's really important that everybody on the team, from management down, really understands, this is where we're at today, and hey, this is where we want to go in the future. And how are we going to address the problems? How are we going to fill the gaps? Ultimately, the employees will learn or perform differently on the job. That is a very likely output. And what does that mean? What role does mobile learning play in the process? It is very rare that mobile is going to be the end-all be-all like it was in that Ebola solution. Most of the times it's supplementing or it's one element within the solution. And I honestly think that's probably in most cases the best way to approach mobile. Is fitting it in and strengthening programs. The rationale. And this is the one I really want to focus on in just a minute. So I'm going to kind of gloss over that here. Defining success. This is key, and it may not be the success that you were thinking about before. So for example, if you are adding performance support to your particular solutions, your definition of success may be high utilization for the first X number of months by an employee, but over time our goal would be that they do it enough on the job, they don't need the tool anymore. So the utilization should kind of tinker off over time. I have had solutions where the success criteria is to have absolutely no change from a client perspective. They don't want to know that, the person that was helping them with their rehab and their therapy, their whole world was rocked by going to a brand new mobile enterprise-wide technology. The patients were the ones they did not want to affect. It's the quality of the care, and they didn't want that to change. So, how are you going to define success? What are you going to measure? And at what various points over time will you measure that? And then the one I really kind of want to hone in on here is the mobile rational key question. So, so often people want to go on to the new technology or the latest thing because other people are doing it. It's the peer pressure. Maybe there's a CEO in the organization that says, my kids are always playing, these mobile games. We need to attract the millennials or address the way the millennials learn things. And I'm not dissing those, but really we need to make sure that the mobile, we understand how it's going to address the problem. That, how is it going to support your existing training? Why is mobile the best option? Because if it's not the best option, why are we doing it? How are you going to adjust the content to fit mobile usage? People talk about, micro-learning, and it's this new hot thing. Now, some folks even, define micro-learning as 10-minute segments. The reality of it is that content has got to be chunked down into smaller pieces, regardless of the delivery method. It's just too much for us to absorb. So redesigning content into the most critical content needed in a mobile delivery is key. Videos, we're looking at 30 seconds on a video, maybe a minute if you can. It's not a new trend, it's just a design challenge that we're addressed with. And we can get a hint of that on taking a look at, again, how mobile web developers and designers have tackled that problem, because they've got a lot of years under their belt at this point. Another thing about the content side of it is, and this is a new mindset, is your designers are probably really accustomed to, if you do a lot of e-learning courses, of I want this graphic to be here, I want an animation to come over. I do not recommend that you do that in a mobile world. Allow the devices to have the content flow and show up based upon the device. Trying to go through that and anticipate for each individual device is really kind of a nightmare. And that, so keep this in mind, and this is going to be posted up on the site, so take pictures of it. I'd run through it with your team as you're moving forward. And that, so I've got a quick question here, and that is, what are your favorite mobile projects that you've worked on? Probably the very first mobile project that I worked on to this day is my favorite, and that was one that I created for there were a group of therapists, and again, it was an example I just talked about briefly about an enterprise-wide change and going from, treating the care of the patient and all the documentation on, handwriting and notes and paper into a completely automated mobile system that ran on an iPhone the first year the iPhones came out. And that, and what I loved about it is it was exciting to look at my team and say, we can't do what we did in the past. Those won't work. No one had done it before. And we came up with all these tips and strategies and really thought out of the box. And at the end of the day, we created an award-winning solution, and that from the CLO organization, and I'm proud to it to this day. It's the costs, it can really range for developing it. That was another question that somebody just kind of popped in, and A prototype, if you are outsourcing it and you're going to an app-based, it could be $35,000 to $60,000. If you're looking at a true native app prototype and looking at a large rollout, for some organizations, if you're just looking at the text messaging component, it's the cost at that point is, do you have a service in-house you can leverage, which you may very well have? Does it have an engine that allows you to create the rationale structure? And then, kind of moving forward with that, I have done mobile solutions personally as cost-effective as probably $15,000 for a total solution, pretty low end. And to be honest, I have done mobile solutions that go into the 7 figures as well. So it's kind of all across the board on those. And again, guys, feel free to shoot in some questions. So another question that just popped up, what's the difference between PhoneGap and native apps? So when you think about apps, there's 3 types today. In the future, there probably won't be 3. The first type is a web app. What that is you are actually going to a web address and the content is divvied up there. A native app, you go to your iTunes store or your Google Play Store and you download an app 100% native to your device. It was coded 100% to your device. If you are on an Apple device, that is a Apple dev kit that you use. It is a different software package if you're going to the Android device. So native apps are the most expensive apps to create because you're creating multiple times. Where PhoneGap comes into play is the third type, which is the type that's kind of my favorite, which is the hybrid app. You have the ease of deployment of the web and the ease of updatability of your content. The PhoneGap wraps it up in a pretty package that allows you, it looks like a native app instead of a website, and more importantly, it allows you to access unique attributes of that device. So for example, you could access the phone. Not the phone, I keep saying that, the camera. You could access the camera and be able to leverage augmented reality within the actual app. So it allows you to take a web structure, so HTML, take software and make it look and sort of function like a native app. It's not 100%, but it's a kind of the nice middle ground in app development. And again, PhoneGap is just a software package that allows you to do that.
Brenda, this is John Alexson.
Yes.
We have customers who are looking at sending out assessment questions in a spaced manner, maybe let's say one assessment question a week,
Sure.
many times to study for an exam. And I guess my question to you is, in the content, comparing, many of these customers have mobile responsive platforms already, so
right.
they can literally accomplish the mission of sending a quiz question to a phone with the technology they have in place. What do you see as the advantages of going to the point of having an actual phone application that people need to download to access the quiz?
The actual downloading of the quizzes on their device, one benefit of that would be is that they could be completely offline. So if I am traveling on a plane that does not today have Wi-Fi, and there still are some of those out there, I could actually interact with the content. When I hit the ground, I could then push it back up into the app without taking out my laptop. For a lot of folks, it's really just the text messaging. It's not a standalone app for the quiz questions. It's adding a text message element to it, which is something that we're all really used to. It's comfortable. It doesn't seem time-consuming, and it proactively dishes to them versus me having to open up an app and go look for something. There has been studies out there that if the learners have to proactively go do something, whether it's go to a website to take those questions or to interact with something, if it's not a notification that pops up to them, that's a major reason to want to drop out in today's technology world. So Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, it does. In
Okay.
fact, as you were talking about an airplane, I was thinking about how a lot of physicians might end up in places in the hospital that just don't have very good wireless bandwidth. And for example.
Absolutely. Well, and John, you just hit on something real quick. Thank you for doing that. So in a hospital setting, you have all these different Wi-Fi networks that are set up, and that's actually one of the lessons learned I learned in that very first project. If you use a mobile project and you're accessing the internet, your phone is going to flip from one internet tower to the other, and that can happen multiple times inside of your actual hospital setting or lockdown setting. And what that means is that if you're deploying typical SCORM content tied to an LMS, all those types of things, you just lost any of your tracking ability and the system just shut down. And that, so whether it would be the text component or something that's actually loaded onto the physical device, it would allow you to integrate or work with it in that type of setting as well. Great. Guys, any other questions you want to throw out there? We have a few more minutes. While you guys are thinking or typing, the screen that's up right now is really just a summary of everything that I've walked through in the process point. The one thing I do recommend you guys do is really figure out what are your strategic objectives. It allows everybody to stay on the same place. There needs to be a goal or an instructional intent when you're using mobile. And I'm glad to hear you guys are already, past that responsive point and looking hopefully into the future of, how can we leverage it? What's that strategic objective? Is it to fill the forgetting curve or, the gaps, or to help apply the content to them, bring learning closer to the moment of time of performance? They are limitless and they are all custom to each client. So again, please.
I have another question. I don't want to dominate the questions here, but while people are maybe typing in the text box other questions, I have one other one, and it's kind of geeky. But what's been your experience? What have you seen in terms of the use of XAPI to communicate to mobile applications?
Yeah. So I love XAPI. It's something our industry has needed, and for those of you that may not be familiar with that term, it's basically a language that allows us to save and record any activity that takes place, whether it's within a learning course or a website or an app or even a face-to-face session, and it really allows us to get to that point of having true, meaningful analysis data. So that said, the challenges that the companies are having is that the structure of that particular statement has an action verb in it. So if I said that Brenda attended a course, just for a basic one, and another developer in a different course said Brenda finished the course or used a different action verb, you can't correlate those 2 points together. So part of the challenge of XAPI is how do you create a consistent verb usage point that everyone is tracking the exact same data points that are there. I still believe that XAPI is the future for the learning industry. Whether it replaces learning management systems, I think there'll always be a need for a learning management system, but they are pretty locked down with the types of data that executives are looking for, or even class folks. So an instructor to be able to go back and see which questions particular students missed in these text blasts that go out, I can customize my questions or my interactions in the course. I can see where I had a gap. So I think it has a tremendous amount of strength out there. It's been around a few years, and we just need to jump into it and start using it and working with it more, I think, but strategically.
So, Brenda, as we conclude, and feel free to put up your last slide there with your information. Tell me a little bit, not to get too promotional here, but for those organizations that are interested in hiring you as a consultant, can you kind of give us, use cases or case studies of how you like to work with organizations that want to move into mobile, and what kind of services do you perform?
Yeah, so thanks, John, for asking. So I am probably one of the most flexible consultants that you will ever work with, and really it's about finding a way and a process to work with you to be successful. So for some organizations, I am the go-to person for their CLO. So they're looking for an expert that they can pick up the phone and talk to once a week, twice a month for, an hour and say, hey, these are my challenges. What do you think? I need a sounding board. Give me some ideas, something to go after. So, kind of high-level guidance thoughts, all the way down to here is a problem that we are facing today, and help us figure out the best way to solve it, helping them develop a vision document. For some organizations, the roadmap is critical, so I can help with that. The piloting program, what's your piloting plan? So I help up front with the strategy, the documentation, the business cases, making sure everything is probably tip-top, and thinking through the things that the clients possibly may not have. All the way through, trying to find the right team to pull folks together for development, implementation, testing, Q&A. I come in and I do, workshops for folks. Here's my ID team. Help us, start down the path of creating a new mindset and that. So everything I do is 100% custom, can be very small to very large projects. And I would love to talk to anybody that would be interested in, kind of chatting about how mobile can fit within their learning strategy.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Brenda, and we appreciate your time today and for this very insightful discussion. I know that a lot of our followers are exploring different levels of utilizing the phone and the iPad to fulfill the professional development mission that they have. So again, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Corinne, and appreciate the time today, Brenda.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, John, and thank you again, Brenda. We got some really great insights today. Thanks, everyone, again, for attending today's webinar. If you have some time, there is a short survey that will pop up at the end. If you don't mind taking that, we always appreciate the feedback. This webinar was recorded and